Also, if you don't mind, if you can see the QR code on the screen, if you don't mind going ahead and using that QR code to sign in, we would greatly appreciate it. Mahalo.
Illinois. Oh, okay.
Yep, I'm working on it.
Mahalo.
Aloha mai kako. Okay, I am gonna actually stop screen sharing for a second and show you my face. Here you go. Aloha everyone from Molokai. My name is Kanoilani Davis. I am the Executive Director and Program Director of Pulau Hala of Hoʻakā Mana. And we're partnering today with Ohana Center of Excellence with Illinois. And we have our guest panelists today, Jeeyun. If you're here for grant writing and understanding how grant writing works, the basics, and just how it works for nonprofits, how it works for businesses, and how it works for individuals, you're absolutely in the right place. And if you haven't been to Molokai, welcome to Molokai. We're all gonna say hello. We're all in the room right now. Everybody say hi. Hi. So welcome. Let me start off with introducing what you folks are here for through Hoʻakā Mana. Hoʻakā Mana is a Native Hawaiian organization that focuses on mental health and well-being for the Indigenous people, inclusive of any types of skill sets and setting them up with resources within our communities to help with self-identity, help with connecting to culture, helping just really raise awareness around all the resources within our community. So we invite you folks here into our little space, and we're so happy to have everyone join us today. Bear in mind that this is a new space with this webinar. So if I am delayed in trying to get information up, it's only because of that. And so I hope you folks enjoy the rest of our panel and the rest of our presentation. With that being said, I will hand over the show to Illinois to introduce who she is, her organization, and what she's here for. Mahalo.
Aloha nui kako kalamai. I was trying to work on the chat, and then I was like, oh gosh, I gotta say a word. So kalamai, I will fix the chat if it's still not working. I'll figure it out. But aloha mai kako, mahalo kanoi, mahalo G. Just really excited that we can just co-support this space for this awesome webinar and workshop. And so who we are. So I work for Papo'olalokahi. My name is Nunenoi Pohikawa. I work for Papo'olalokahi as a program coordinator for our substance use and mental health projects. And then I also serve as the project manager for the Ohana Center of Excellence, which is an initiative of Papo'olalokahi with some partnerships with San Jose State as well as Cal State East Bay, along with the Hawaii Department of Health Adult Mental Health Division. So we're all partnering in this project to develop this Center of Excellence, and we're really a space, an online space that we're your source of empowerment, education, and support for individuals seeking behavioral health care, including mental health and substance use resources. So we really center in holistic and cultural approaches to mental health and substance use services. And we serve Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, with our organization Papo'olalokahi taking lead on Native Hawaiians and then bringing our Pacific Islander cousins into the to the conversation and doing joint projects. So this is just a brief overview of some of the things that we offer. We have a searchable resource directory where you can search by culture, by language, by region. We serve the entirety of the continental US, Hawaii, Alaska, and the US affiliated Pacific Islands. We have ongoing webinars and trainings. We provide training and technical assistance as well, culturally tailored and regionally specific technical assistance. So if you know anyone that is in need of technical assistance, please feel free to go fill out one of our forms on our website. And you can see our website down here at the bottom, AANHPI-ohana.org. We have regional steering committees throughout the US and the USAPI. We have a national steering committee. We have a lot of in-language resources, and we do provide live interpretation for many of our webinars starting in next year, actually. So please feel free to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and check out our website. And I'll go ahead and pass it back to Kanoi.
Mahalo Lilinoy and mahalo everyone. I noticed a question in the chat about audio. I'm gonna leave that to the text. I have no idea. So Lilinoy, that one came up. I'm gonna share my screen really quickly. Again, if you haven't signed in, please use this QR code. We'll go ahead and place the link in the chat shortly. In the meantime, I'm going to move forward. I want to share a little bit about why you see all these people in this room, these wonderful, wonderful people in this room. We're actually Pulau Hala Small Business Intelligence cohort. And so part of the workshops that we have and presentations we have are all inclusive of skill sets to elevate their businesses. And so we are actually, we're on the last workshop. And then we have Hoʻike on October 25th. So if anybody out there in the world wants to come and watch them do their 3-minute pitches, their mouths are wide open right now, by the way, if you can't see that. They're nervous. They're so on it. And this is what this program is about, is elevating our small businesses and our small business intelligence. We also have some things I want to recognize. Some of our fellows in cohort who will be at Made in Hawaii on November 3rd and 4th. IB 808, Spencer Baby, Convict, and Kiva Hiva. Always recognizing, always elevating, always excellence. I feel like this is super appropriate. So I just wanted to recognize them before we move on. All right, we're going to start going into our presentation now. And I want to introduce this wonderful woman that I've known for a while now. And this is her son, Kaimakana. And she, no words, she's spectacular and amazing. So this particular presentation is around understanding grant funding, acquisition, administration for our Indigenous communities, all of us. So we're really excited to invite Jee into our space. She's a managing partner at ChangeWorks Hawaii as well. I want to do a quick introduction, a proper introduction of who she is. So Jeeyun Lee, she, her, hers. Jeeyun is of Korean descent and has been a guest in the lands of the Kanaka Maoli in the Kingdom of Hawaii since 2009. Mahalo for recognizing that. Okay, she has her master's in social work in international and community development and launched her career in nonprofit service 20 years ago in the Midwest. No ways, it couldn't be more than 20 years. Okay, anyways, after contributing to the Oahu nonprofit sector for almost a decade, Jee moved to Maui in 2018. Because it was important for her to raise her son in where he is from, and for both of them to connect and contribute to that community. This was an experience she never had, being raised in Michigan due to the Korean War's impact on Korea's economy at the time of her parents' immigration. They currently live closer to his Hawaiian Ohana, who is from the Pili area in West Maui. She enjoys spending time with her 12-year-old son and husband immersed in nature, exploring Mauka Tumakai. Jee currently serves as a development manager at Halemakua Health Services and volunteers with many nonprofits in her spare time. She is also a managing partner and a consultant at ChangeWorks, focused on creating impactful change within our community. So for all of our presenters and anybody we partner with, we always ask them, what's one olelo nau'eau or one phrase that inspires them? And Jee shared, adapting Gandhi's quote, she is inspired daily by the phrase, create the world you want to be for him. And so I want to introduce to you our guest speaker, Miss G, and she will jump on. Introduce herself.
Can you hear me okay? Lovely. Well, thank you all for joining and for the lovely introduction, Kanoi. I'm so grateful for the creation of this space and to be able to speak with other individuals who are interested in grant writing and supporting and bringing mana'o and money into our communities and our economy overall. So first off, thank you all very much for joining me. I'm going to do a quick share screen and start the process of sharing some information. So I'm here. I've been writing grants on Maui and Oahu for the last 16, 17 years. I worked in the nonprofit sector as an executive director in other organizations on both islands, and I'm currently doing the development director work over at Halemakua. And I wanted to take this time to just share with you all the basics. And I know Lilinoi had shared that some of you might be interested in going into depth some more, and I'd be more than happy to do that. The thing that we probably need the most in our community here in Hawaii is the opportunity to know, understand, and destigmatize, the process of grant writing and how to get it. So I'm really grateful for this space to be able to share this stuff with you, and am more than happy to be a resource moving forward to each of you in whatever way I can. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do initially is to give you a quick introduction, and also ask you all to share any questions that you might have in the chat, so that I can make sure this time and this space is really for each of you. And I want to make sure that I hit any questions that all of you might have. Thank you for the individuals that were able to do the little Google form in advance so that I'm able to address some of those issues. But it looks like there's people who might have some some grant writing experience to no grant writing experience. So I want to really make sure to cater this information to all of you here. And Ashley is here with me to help monitor the chat and the questions and ensure that I don't miss anything through that process. So she works with me at ChangeWorks, and so please feel free to put in your questions, and we'll make sure to get them answered. So the first part after that, I'd like to go through kind of the nonprofit business development planning aspect of things, and then spend the bulk of our time actually going through a case study example of how to fill out a grant, just so that we can all kind of work through that process together, answer any questions through that process, and kind of share how I think about and what funders think about, to ensure that the submissions that you all do in the future are meaningful and aligned with what the grantors are looking for. And then just do a quick review. Kalamai in advance, I do have a hard stop, but again, happy to connect with you all via email. It is my son's open house, and he just started up at Kamehameha Schools Maui. So I will be on a timeline, but we will get through all of these aspects of things. So again, contact information, Lilinoi and Kanoi will share this slide deck with you all, but my information is here. Feel free to shoot me an email or text. Calls can be sometimes difficult because I'm on calls pretty much all day, but more than happy to share that with you. And then basically, like I said, I'm curious what you all want to learn today and how I can help to make this time most meaningful. So again, feel free to share that in the chat or the Q&As. Just gonna check real quick to make sure. All right, so, oops, sorry about that. Having some issues with my chats. Okay. So in regards to nonprofit business development and planning. Overall, I think it's really important to remember that grants are a lot of work, right? It's not just about writing the grant and getting the grant, but it's also positioning yourself properly to ensure that you're able to administer and actually complete that grant and the grant reporting as necessary. So I really want us to all look at grants from a holistic standpoint. There's a timeline of things that that are required, from really getting a clear sense of what your business or nonprofit is looking for from a grant, or from that development side of things, all the way to submitting the quarterly reports or monthly reports and the final reports, and ensuring that all of the financials are in place. So I think it's really important to remember that it's not just free money, right? There's a reason why people are giving out those grants, and ensuring that your mission, with the work that you want to do with the funds received, actually is covered by the grant, and that you're able to ensure that you have metrics, and like deliverables that you can share back is really, really critical as you kind of think through and process through how you're going to apply for, and then how you're positioned to properly execute that grant. Maybe like a tidbit is, I find that private foundations are a really great place to start. Some of the larger federal grants, or and we'll go through some of those throughout the slide deck. Some of the federal grants and the state grants are definitely more complex, and the private foundation grants do tend to be a little bit less restrictive from the administration side of things, and there's a little bit less reporting overall. So I would highly suggest starting with some of those grant opportunities available, just to get your feet wet if you haven't done this before. And really my why, and the reason why I really like sharing this stuff, is I really have I feel strongly that we have a lot of missed opportunities, because the money is there to do so much of the great work that you all are doing. It's just a matter of making those connections. And I've found that over the years, my gift is helping to create those connections. And so I'm really, really happy to be sharing this with you all. And then overall, just from a cultural sense, I think it's really, grant writing can be really intimidating, right? It sounds like, oh, there's somebody else that needs to do it, or it's really complicated. But, in the time that I've spent here in Hawaii, so much of what you all do is really how you can utilize what you do, how you do it, and the stories around how you connect community, create business, and create connections. And all of that can really be shared within the story of each of your grants. So I know Kanoe has heard this before, but to me, it's really like sharing a mo'olelo, right? And being able to write that grant in a way that is inspiring and connecting to community, the work, and being able to share the work that you're doing in a meaningful way. So the grant process, like I kind of shared previously, is multiple different steps. So the first part of the grant process actually starts way before. I mean, if you can see here, the writing and submission doesn't really happen until the fourth step, right? So this part, the identifying, the searching, and the planning, is oftentimes what I find people who come to me for support haven't done. They're just thinking, oh, I want money for grants. Can you help me, right? But if I don't know what you are doing or what the intention of your work is, it becomes really difficult to write a grant for it, right? I don't know what you're doing or how you're going to be doing it. So that first step is really identification, right? So it's identifying your mo'olelo. It's clearly being able to articulate your story and have a clear paragraph, real short, simple elevator pitch kind, that outlines your purpose as to what you're trying to do, why, and how it positively impacts your community at large, right? Identifying the community need that you're addressing and your why, and then writing it out and having someone review it who knows nothing about your mission. so many of us are really embedded in the work that we're doing, and we're used to talking about it because we're ma'a with it, but not necessarily, that stuff doesn't necessarily translate if you have zero idea of what your business plan is or what your nonprofit is. So that's why it's so helpful to have somebody who really doesn't have a sense of your business or your nonprofit or whatever you're writing about, to take a look and read it, because that creates that kind of blank slate to be able to draw from. So I really encourage everybody to spend some time, this is why I also branched out into doing strategic planning and visioning, right? To be able to really get a sense of what is your why? What are you trying to accomplish through the work that you're doing? How do you plan on doing that? And how is that going to impact your community? And being able to really share that in a meaningful way, such as, stories, being able to create testimonials, being able to share so that feeling is able to be felt by the reader. A lot of this you might be able to find in your business plan if you have one, or your nonprofit mission statements, or any strategic planning that you may have already done in your organization. The next step is actually to start searching, right? So we're creating a development strategy, looking at, okay, where are we going to go for this, right? How are we going to address the needs and really create a diversified funding stream to stabilize your business or nonprofit? So there's multiple different places that you can go. So development strategy really encompasses all the different ways, and grant writing is one of those ways in which you can, create, stability and security within your organization. But other aspects are major gifts and endowments, looking for individuals who might really who might really connect with your mission or your business. Private foundation, right, grants. There's federal and international grants. There's state grants, county or city and county grants to go through. And then taking a look at those deadlines. A lot of times during this process, what I will do is create a grants tracker. So like a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet to keep track of, ooh, these are some grants that I'm starting to look at that might align with, the need that I've identified. And keeping track of, okay, where is this grant? Oh, here's the hyperlink for me to be able to go and look at it again. The due date is in December, whereas the next one is a different grant. Here's the hyperlink, what it's for, and the due date is in March. So you'd want to do the December one first. So it helps to kind of create that, that bird's eye view scope of what you're looking for to ensure that that all of your development work aligns with each other, and also creates kind of synchronicity as you move forward. As you progress, one of the things that I think is important to look at is diversifying those funding streams, right? So with any business or nonprofit, you're looking to have, maybe it's a major gifts campaign, end of the year campaign, different grants from different sources. You don't want one grant that covers all of your expenses and costs, because what happens if that goes away, right? And so making sure that you have that diverse revenue stream will create, a stable platform for you. It's just very similar to budgeting and figuring out your own personal budgets, right? You look at what you do, what your spouse does, how do we strategize to make sure that everything, is as stable as it can be. So that's, within that searching process. And then once you've, identified, okay, this is the grant that I'm going to do, you can start to plan for that process, preparing to write and administer your grants. One of my key takeaways that I always ask of individuals that I'm working with are kind of, what are your top 2 or 3 priorities for the year? And that really starts to narrow down on what you're going to write your grants for. What I find is it's really easy to be like, oh, I can write a grant and kind of make my mission align with this grant, and then I can write that grant over there and make it align this way. But then as you start to do that, you start to spread yourself too thin. In the grants world, we call that mission drift, right? You're able to kind of make it fit, but then you're kind of spread out and you're not really focused on the intention of the work that you're trying to do. So instead of trying to find grants that fit, or trying to fit into the grants that exist, I really encourage you to find grants that fit into what you're trying to do, because it'll save you a lot of time and headache in the future. So with that, we're taking a look at that strategy and that alignment, figuring out what those 2 or 3 kind of core goals are for the year, and then figuring out your development plan or strategy to meet your goals, right? If it's I want to, connect children and families to nature. I'm going to do this by doing school field trips and intersession day camps, right? So being able to have that stuff identified in advance will allow for you to write the grant that's more aligned with what your goals are as a business or a nonprofit. So, we talked about the development tracker. As you start to identify what those grants are as well, and what your 2 or 3 goals are, a lot of the grants, especially the county or city and county, as well as state and federal grants, and even a lot of the private foundation grants will have grants workshops, and those are usually done in advance. One of the things I really like to do is to get put onto like the listservs, the emails, like the contact me email forms for Hawaii Community Foundation, CNHA, Hawaii Alliance for Nonprofit Organizations, HANO, Weinberg Foundation, city and county, right? All those different places, and you make it so that they email you when different things come up, and that way you're able to see different opportunities that are arising. I've also found social media and Instagram is a really great place to keep track of different grants that are coming up, and following those different funders and individuals who provide grants, like the Women's Fund, for instance, is another one. And then after you have all that in place, the writing becomes easier because, quite frankly, I probably have 1 or 2 templates a year that I write that I then utilize and recycle for different grants. Because again, my focus is not around the grant, my focus is around the intention of the work I want to do for the year. And so what I'll do is I'll work with, whatever grant is next, and help to get that written up, and then utilize information, data points, metrics, different studies that I found from that one grant, and then adapt it to the next grant as I move forward. And then through that process, one of the main kind of pillars that I like to utilize is SMART goals. And so SMART goals are actually that is utilized kind of, and it's to create specific, measurable, time-bound, specific, measurable, attainable, and time-bound goals through the process. I'm trying to Google it, but my internet's not working very well. And so being able to have those goals that are able to really be clear and concise. So you want deadlines, you want to know exactly what you're going to be doing. So I'm going to, like a SMART goal would be, I'm going to increase my impact and have 50% more kids attending this intercession day camp by September of 2024, right? So the goal is really clear, it's time bound, it's measurable, it's very specific, and you're able to really wrap your brain around it. And that's what those grantors are looking for. They want to know what you're going to accomplish, by when, and how. So utilizing that system really has helped me be much more clear in my writing. So then when it comes to that writing and submission, this is where the process of sharing your story, to me really connects with the notion of creating or sharing mo'olelo. You want to share your story. You want to create the narrative in a passionate way, connecting back to the goals of the funder. So this is where it really helps to start to research each of the grant funders that you're writing for. So it's almost like dating, right? You want to have the background of who this person is, what they're looking for. You want their profile, right? So you go into Hawaii Community Foundation, for instance, and you want to go in and you want to get a sense of what their intentions are within their agency. What are they trying to fund? What are their goals, right? How do your goals then align with their goals? And how do you write and connect to those things? So most grants, when you go to kind of the info document that they provide you with, will share what their intentions are. And your job then is to write passionately about the work that you're going to be doing, show how that work that you're doing aligns well with the goals of the funder. Another thing is, obviously out here in Hawaii, there's so many people that we know. It's all about word of mouth. And sometimes we'll go in and look at the board of directors or the board of trustees, take a look to see, hey, does anybody have contacts over there that I might know, right? I might know them. It might be a board member that knows them. It might be a friend that knows them, right? To make it so that you can ask some of those questions in advance. And what I've found is that overall, the grantors really appreciate when you ask questions. I actually really encourage it because it makes you stand out already. Then they know you by name. Oh, okay. Jee's going to be writing about this and she's asking questions about X, Y, and Z. So already they know that you're invested. You're looking to ensure that the work that you're doing really aligns with their intentions as a funder. And then if possible, after submission, as many times as I can, I will try and get somebody to, share with a board member or with a trustee. Oh, hey, this agency submitted and I know them and I know that they're doing good work. Just because I think that connection really makes a difference out here. And then finally is the kind of execution and reporting. So let's say we receive a grant, then I think it's really important to start to build that relationship, because we here, at least on the islands, have a limited number of grantors and funders that are available to us. So ensuring that we are taking care of that relationship is really, really critical. Ensuring that you're reporting on a timely basis, you're communicating to your funder. Even if, there was actually plenty of times when, like, for instance, as you saw, I live on West Maui, so I couldn't submit something because I didn't have Wi-Fi and things weren't set up. I made sure to email my funders to ensure that they were aware of it. And they're almost always incredibly accommodating as long as you do it in advance. What you don't want is for them to come to you and say, hey, where is this thing that, should have been submitted a week ago or whatever it is. So that, that line of communication, even, handwritten mahalo cards, after you receive a grant, all those just lovely soft touches make a big difference in that aspect. And as you are doing your planning for your administration, I think it's really also important to make sure that you're prepared for that reporting. And that's part of why I like those kind of 2 to 3 different core action steps, or what you're trying to do for the year, because then you can build out your reporting and your data around those 2 or 3 things. And then within each grant, you share those, like, I'm going to report on this information that I've done by tracking the number of kids that come through, by doing pre and post test analysis, whatever it is, right? So that the data that you're collecting is not specific to each grant, it's specific to you and your business or your agency, right? And that way it keeps the reporting side less complicated and easier to do. I'm gonna take a quick pause here and just double check to see if anybody has any questions. No? Okay. Well, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm gonna keep moving forward. So I'm gonna touch base now a little bit on the Tara, sorry, I just saw that you have a question. Is it possible, Illinois, to put her off of mute?
Yeah, once. Okay,
Oh, I
should be allowed to talk. Tara.
Aloha. Mahalo for this chance to speak. My question, and it's okay if it's not a good time for this question. When we're talking, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
So when particularly I'm looking at like say grants.gov, these federal grants, and it looks like it's like a 7 months to a year that they give from when they open it to the deadline. Sometimes they're much longer, right? But it seems like there's like this 7th month, 1 year timeline. And is that like how long they expect you to be preparing? Is it bad if you take less time to prepare, or like is that like a golden number, this 1 year that they give you? So that was kind of my question, like how long should you spend preparing your application? That's my question.
Sure. So when it comes to preparations, I think it depends on how much work you've already done. So Ashley and I, for instance, are working on a grant together. And if she's totally new to the organization, or if it's a grant that's completely different from anything we've ever written before, it could take a long time. But there is nobody in their right mind that's spending 7 months to a year preparing a grant application. I can guarantee you that. Most of the time, us grant writers are whipping things together pretty quickly. I'm gonna guess, I'm trying to think, probably the longest I've worked on something would be maybe like a week's worth of time, and that was for like a major federal grant. And a lot of that is like not even the grant writing side of things, it's like getting into the portals, which I'll talk about a little bit more, and ensuring that you've got your sam.gov and all these other components integrated in to be able to even be positioned properly to submit the grant itself from a federal side of things. But overall, I think it's a matter of how well you know the organization, your organization or your agency, how much data you already have collected, and things like that. I hope that helps. Tara, did you want to share anything more? Your hand's back up. So
I just wanted to say that was an incredibly direct and helpful answer. Mahalo.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Thank you. Okay, I saw.
I think Kanoi also.
Nope. Okay. Kanoi? Yes.
Hi, aloha. I just wanted to ask, and maybe you can emphasize it on this, or just like even share a little bit about this. But I wanted to see if you could talk about something similar, like fellowships, writing for grants. Say, for instance, if you're an artist or if you're in cultural arts, a lot of our fellows here on Molokai can apply for those fellowships, and those fellowships they do come with money. And in writing for fellowships and other cohorts, it's kind of the same way in which we need to have the narrative. We need to know what our mission or vision is. We need to know who we are as a person. But can you elaborate a little bit about how that works for individuals who have small businesses, and how that could elevate some of the work they're doing, some of the art that they're doing, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Honestly, I think, Kanoe, you're probably even better at doing this stuff because you've taken things by the horns as usual and run with it for sure. But I think fellowships and opportunities to collaborate, nationally and internationally are just an incredible way to gain mana'o and bring it back to our communities and into the work that we all are doing to perpetuate culture and community and all of the different components of the work that we do. Writing is very similar, I believe, in terms of sharing the story of you. And one of, I think, the hardest parts for our community and just our culture is it sounds really conceited, and it feels really conceited to be talking about ourselves in meaningful, in ways, in terms of what we've done and what we're doing and what we want to do, right? Our culture is not about me, it's about we. And so being able to talk in that narrative is definitely outside of our norm. Even, as Kanoe's introducing me, I want to like slouch down into my seat and crawl into a corner. And so, but it is really important, and this is, part of what I will, address as well, depending on the category and the audience that you're trying to cater to, how you speak and your tone needs to change. You don't talk to your parents the same way you talk to your kids, right? You don't talk to your grandparents the same way you talk to your parents. And so you have to be able to adapt your language and your story to be absorbable by the audience that you're trying to write to. So I would really encourage all of you to do that. One of the things I do oftentimes is I have somebody else do it for me when it's about me, because it makes it a lot easier. I know that I want to crawl into the corner, but if I ask Ashley or Lilinoy or Kanoe to share a little bit about what they think that my gifts are, they will do that in a heartbeat, in a way that that then helps me center around, what other people see as my strengths and my gifts through that process. So I would really encourage all of you to do that. It's part of what I think makes it seem to outsiders like, oh, there's like not a lot of organization or not a lot of this and that. And the reality is, we're a community that really is humble, and being able to share that stuff about ourselves is uncomfortable, but getting out of that and even doing that and then saving that. Like, I have some of those things saved that I go back to for those types of fellowship opportunities and whatnot. And then people like Kanoe force me to do it. So that helps. Does that help, Kanoe? Did I respond to that?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
Of course. Okay, so kind of the next thing I wanted to go through was this was like nonprofit business development and planning around the different categories that we've talked about. So like I shared, for the lack of a better way of putting it, the simplest, easiest money and funding is going to be around major gifts, donors, individual giving, and endowments, and then private foundation grants. So that the first bullet and the last bullet. Those grants tend to be a little bit less cumbersome, or those categories, I guess, because major gifts aren't really a grant necessarily, but it's about what we're just ma'atu, right? Relationship building. It's about being able to develop a relationship, understand what people are looking for, asking, private foundation, this is what I'm interested in being able to do. Do you have any suggestions, or is there a way that that we can collaborate together? Because it really is like a really nice collaboration between the foundation and an agency to work together. When it's done properly, it really is a symbiotic relationship. majors that might work for individual giving and different individual giving campaigns, and then, you know, endowments, kind of funds in perpetuity off of residuals that people can do. So those are the kind of two areas that I think are probably the easiest to initially go after. After that would be, you know, city and county grants. A lot of the things that people do within grant writing overall too is oftentimes funders will not fund you. So you're not going to get a grant initially for $250,000, right? The likelihood is that they're going to test the waters, because as much as we've gotten burned, right, the grantors have gotten burned as well. And so they want to make sure, hey, is this individual or is this agency going to provide me with the reporting that I need? Are they going to follow through on the work that they said that they're going to do? Do they have that infrastructure set up and in place? And being able to clearly articulate that that stuff is in place is always going to help your cause. So just make sure that you can clearly and confidently show how that reporting is going to happen in your grants themselves, because that will always make it so that it's easier for individuals to want to fund you. So city and county grants, oftentimes, like I know there's some individuals here on Kauai, Maui County, Oahu. A lot of the city and county or county websites will have a grants department or division, and you can get onto their listserv so that they can share out different opportunities as they arise, or it's within the city and county will push out their RFPs or requests for proposals at the same time every year. So getting a sense of when that is, going onto the website, getting a better understanding of those things is really helpful. Most counties and city and counties have Office of Economic Development. So OED is normally what it's called within each of the different counties. And in those spaces are oftentimes business grant opportunities that are available. There's also, depending on what the work is, right? Offices on climate and environmental protection. There's Department of Housing, Health and Human Concerns, right? So different departments will have different grants. So it's not just one area. You're going to have to look at the different areas that your work might be relevant in, and then be able to submit applications. Some grants are annual, other grants are year over year. Usually I find they're either 1 to 2 year cycles. So getting a better sense, you know, of you in your county, of what you're trying to do, is really helpful information to have. Also, all of the applications are not the same between the departments. So just really familiarizing yourself with the forms. Almost all the city and county websites that I've been on will share what that application form looks like. And they almost always recycle most of it. So being able to even go in, like let's say you're interested in an Office of Economic Development grant on Maui, you can go onto that OED Maui County website and actually find it. Even though, you know, the deadline may have passed already, and you can actually get started on that process early, even before the new RFP comes out, so that you have the time to really process it, look through it, write what you want, and then you can adapt it a little bit if things change. Same with the state. Oh, and then, you know, same thing, right? Oftentimes you're not going to get, like, I just wrote one for Kauai Adult Day Health, and it's the first time that they received a grant and aid request from us. So they have county grant and aids, and I requested $50,000 and we got 5, because we're although we're not a new agency, we're new to them, right? So being able to start that relationship, we still are going to move forward with it. We're going to develop that relationship, and then we're going to show their outcomes with that amount. And then hopefully in the following years, that trust and that relationship will build and continue to grow. So and again, still important if you know people within that county agency, reaching out, checking to see, hey, I'm interested in about it, and I'd be curious to see what your specific priorities are. I looked at your website, but I'd love to talk more about it, right? All those different opportunities will make you stand out. So on the state side, probably the biggest grants that are available are grant and aids. Those are additional funds that the state has to be able to give out to the nonprofit community or in partnership with. Grants overall are normally separated into two different categories. There's capital and operations. So capital grants are grants for physical things, buildings, right? A capital improvement project and plan. So it would be a grant to build a school or fix the roof, right? Physical capital needs for an agency. The operation side of things are more along the lines of paying for thing, that sort of thing. So those are kind of the two categories also that the state grant and aids are under. You can only submit one for each category every year that they do provide state grant and aids. And usually you get one, I'm not, or possibly both. I don't see both very often, honestly. The capital grants tend to be easier. The operations grants are a little bit more difficult to get, but it is definitely doable. And a lot of the state grant and aids, are around kind of, I mean, it's not necessarily called lobbying, but it's lobbying, where you're able to, go to your state reps and your senators and make the case and share a one-pager about the work you want to do, be able to answer any questions that they might have and request for their support through that process. So those are kind of the state grant and aid processes. The state grant and aids are also not quick. So we are currently providing, actually executing one of the grant and aids that I received 2 years ago, for instance. So you really want to look into the future before you do any of that stuff, because you're not going to be receiving the state grant and aid the same year or within a couple of months or any of that stuff. It's a long process. They require quarterly reporting, and you're usually assigned to a department to help to administer that grant and aid with a specific department with the state. Federal government grants. So those are kind of the beasts, right? They tend to be very governmental in their approach to things. There's a lot of online portals, and it can be a very cumbersome process. So learning to do that is probably another training in and of itself, but it's also a really great opportunity to bring in funds from outside of our community and help to bolster the work that we're doing. Luckily, we also have a lot of really amazing nonprofits and other entities within our state that bring that money in and then help to distribute it throughout our communities. So a lot of funding, will go to the state from the federal government grants and things like that. But federal government grants are usually much more technical. A opportunity that I would love to highlight, I believe they're still doing it, is that the agency Hawaii Alliance for Nonprofit Organizations, HANO, they actually provide grant technical assistance services for free or for a reduced cost that will actually support agencies in helping to write a federal government grant. and review it. And I actually used to be a part of that group. I've helped different nonprofits and different agencies write different federal governmental grants and ask and answer any questions that come up through that process, and be able to help to cater things to that lens. Because obviously, if you're writing a federal government grant, we have to understand that we're one of 50 states plus the territories. One agency within all of the requests that are coming in via RFP. We can't use Olelo Hawaii without explaining things. We can't use terms without being able to really explain things in terms that people on the continent would understand. So those kinds of different lenses, like I was talking about, is really important in the situation. Any questions about this section, the different categories of grants? Oh, so I see Mahealani, the state GIA, is it a reimbursable grant? It is reimbursable. They do not pay up front. So you have to also be prepared to front the money in advance and then wait until that money gets reimbursed. You also cannot start spending it until everything is encumbered and the contract is signed, and there's a specific date on that contract. And that doesn't normally go back to when you submitted the grant. It will go back to when you actually signed on, and the governor countersigns that process. Let's see, I think I have another. Kanilani? Or was it Tara? Maybe I'll try Tara. Go ahead, Tara. I think I tried.
Aloha. And then I'm not sure if you're going to get to this later, but since you were talking about the federal grants, a lot of them mention this concept called matching, which I really don't understand. So if you have any explanation for that.
Yes, that's great. And please keep asking these questions. Some of this stuff, I'm so ma'a to it that I forget that other people might not know, right? So the matching component is very often, it's very common in actually not just federal grants, but other grants as well, where they're looking for additional funds that align with the work that you want to do, because funders like to fund successful programs, right? So what they're looking for is, are there other people that are already funding you as well? And that's kind of why I say, let's start with like those individual giving or the donors, or even the volunteer time that individuals might support your agency with. All of that can count towards in-kind matching. So in-kind is like, you're not getting money, but you might get time, right? So I'm volunteering my time at my son's school. That would be an in-kind donation. I'm giving my son's school $1,000. That's actually an individual donation, right? So those are the two different ways. And oftentimes when they're looking for matching, they're actually looking for matching funds. So it would be the money dollar component of other agencies or your own agency, right? So it could be ChangeWorks is going to be matching the work that we're doing for Maui wildfire response. So we're requesting $50,000. ChangeWorks is going to provide matching funds of $10,000 to do the work, to create a budget of $60,000. So that's the concept of matching. So really the hardest part is starting to get some of those initial grants. Going for the smaller private foundation grants is really great for that, because if you get $1,000, $5,000, those things add up, and then you can go in towards a city and county grant or a federal grant, where you can leverage your existing funds that you've received into matching. This is also why it's best to have just those 2 or 3 priorities, because you can utilize your entire bucket to match the intention of the work that you're trying to be doing. Does that make sense? Okay. And Trisha, yes, we are going to be sending out the recording. Lily Noy is going to be kind enough to do that. Okay, so then next steps are what to keep in mind: the outcomes-based data. strategy and alignment between grant funds, right? We talked about all of that. Attending those guidance workshops, tracking, so making sure that you've got an Excel spreadsheet or some way to track on a regular basis, and having your team or yourself, put in that data on a regular basis so you don't lose sight of that stuff. Ensuring that you see grants in the eyes of the funder, right? So you really have to ensure that what you're writing aligns with what they're looking for, not what you're excited about only, right? But you have to make them excited about the work that you're trying to be doing. Oftentimes there's a scoring rubric that you can look at in advance to be able to know what they're going to score you with. So it's kind of like in school, right? Like you get a different point system. So for the summary section, executive summary section, you might get 5 points. For the, the conclusion, you might get 10 points, that sort of thing. Because it allows for you to try new opportunities and see if they work without creating an entire program, right? Grant funders really do like funding new concepts, right? That are also data driven based on existing data and work that you've done. And then, like we've discussed, knowing your audience. Okay. Okay, so I know we're getting a little bit close, and I can go over a little bit because my son's with his stepdad. Case studies. So I kind of wanted to go through a quick synopsis of a grant, and it'll be real quick and dirty, but at least you get a sense of what people are looking for. So these kind of bullets are oftentimes the types of questions that are almost always consistent. Sometimes they're named a little bit differently, but of the different types of things that a grant is going to be requesting of you. A title. This is, looking for something that's catchy, that's meaningful, right? Being able to share, what it's about. So I worked at the Nature Center before, so the title might be, connecting children and families to nature. Something that is really simple and concise. Who are we? This is the space where you are sharing the story of you and your agency in a meaningful way. Your elevator pitch, like we talked about in the beginning. Identified need. We have found that what are those called? Field trips, one-day field trips do not really impact our kids in a meaningful way. We found, results from pre and post test studies show that there's behavior change happening in the kids that we're serving. So what we want to do is connect more of the kids that are interested to be able to go to our intercession day camps and not have it so that they're unable to attend because they're unable to pay. So the objective and the purpose is, we want to increase the number of children that are attending our intercession weekly day camps, and we're able to connect them with, AINA-based education and have them connect with AINA so that they can perpetuate that connection and within the next generation. How will we do the work? We're going to expand our intercession day camp by adding on additional environmental educators and ensuring that we have 50% more kids outcomes. So you're looking at qualitative and quantitative data, right? So you want to be able to show the touchy-feely things, right? Great example is my son came home one day and he told me I wasn't allowed to use the dishwasher anymore because he told me that there's more microplastics than plankton in the ocean. And he was 7 when he told me this. So obviously, right, it's a great story of how much he connected with what he was being taught at this day camp, at this intercession day camp. Quantitative data. We are going to have 100 kids come through the program and have X number of hours of interaction at the day camp, with the funds that are provided. Why does this matter? Our community as a whole, right? Our culture, our community, values Aina, values connection to place, and place is self, and self is community, and community is culture, right? So it's perpetuating culture through this process. Who are your partners? You know, we can share the different funders that we're already working with. We can share that we're going to be bringing in the beekeeper to talk about, you know, native bees. We're going to be bringing in, you know, other nonprofits to be able to share about the work that they're doing, you know, through this process during that intercession day camp. So you can see that this process of going through this kind of case study will help you identify within your agency all of these different components so that you're prepared to write the grant. And then it'll help you also go through, okay, if I need to keep track of all this data, what systems do I have to have in place? What instruments do I have to have in place in order to make sure that I can capture this data? Do I need to create a pre-test, a post-test survey, those kinds of things? Okay, so I hope that that helped. I know it was a lot of information very quickly. I wanted to create some space to answer any additional questions though, or anything that you felt would be missing or that you might want us to share, as you know, if we are able to do another training, like a part 2 for this. Thank you, Tara. Anybody else?
I actually have a question, if I might ask. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm curious, you mentioned a little bit about the
Sorry, what was that?
oh, sorry. You mentioned about
Yes, I can.
like when using Olala Hawaii without like when we're using Olala Hawaii in the grant. Would you say, because I've kind of gone back and forth about this, like using Olala Hawaii and then explaining it, or if, you know, sometimes there's like a word count that you can't go over, and then you're you know, you don't necessarily want the extra words. Like what are your thoughts on using Olala Hawaii versus just explaining it in detail in English?
I think it depends on the grant. I think if you're writing a CNHA grant, you should probably use Olala Hawaii. I do think that there's also something attractive about a reader, you know, federally learning and reading and understanding. I think it's part of what it's our kuleana, right? To share and expose. But I think I would keep it minimal. Like that, one of the things I don't do is I don't do that necessarily unless I'm going to put the description of what it is in the title. Like for instance, in the title, I don't necessarily do that. I might use the word or teach a word and then go back to it at the end of my RFP, my grant submission, and kind of use that as my through line through the process, right? It might be something that, you know, an essence of some word, right? You know, for instance, like kuleana is a great one, right? Like how does kuleana fit in, and you weave that into your mo'olelo, your story, through that process. So for a federal grant, I'm more likely to do something like that. Whereas for a Hawaii Community Foundation grant, a state grant, I'm definitely much more apt to use Olala Hawaii. I do usually leave out all diacritical markings because the formatting gets really messed up, and most funders request that you leave that out entirely. So unless you're PDFing something, if you're putting something into a text box, I always leave it out because it will just mess up and make it really difficult to see.
Mahalo. I also put your that other PDF into the chat right now. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Yes, thank you. So the PDF in the chat, and I'm sure we can send it out in different ways. Part of it is kind of another example of a narrative that we worked on together in the last session that Kanoilani and I did together. But also the beginning parts are different areas or portals or suggestions of thoughts of where to go for different grants, state grants, county grants, private foundation grants, right? So that you can Google it and just find where that information is and learn a little bit more about who they are and what they do. I guess this is probably a good place to say too, like there were honestly places, people, we have kuleana too of where we take our funds from, right? And so that's something that I'm always very thoughtful of in the work that I'm doing to ensure that there's mission alignment in the work that we're doing. And at the same time, I also think there's a balance of that with what I call Robin Hooding it, right? If we have the funds to be able to do the work to make impactful change within our community, unless you feel like in your gut that it's not right, I'm a firm believer that we also need to teach, right, through that process. And so I know, like, especially when I was working, environmental education, some people were like clearly trying to greenwash is what we called it, right? They want to make it look like, they're malama aina and all these different things by aligning with this nonprofit, even though they might be a gasoline company, right? Or a different entity that maybe isn't quite aligned with that. But it's that balance of figuring out whether do the ends justify the means? Is this a teachable moment that we can share with our community, right? Or is it not the right fit? And I think it's always on a case by case basis. You all can trust your na'au through that process, and kind of go from there. But most of the individuals that I work with, I have a direct relationship with somebody that I trust, and that we've, developed over time. So I would really highly encourage that, especially from the private foundation side of things. Indigenous. Yes, Kathy. So yes, the advice would apply to any Indigenous languages and terms, for sure. Any other questions? Was this helpful? Yes? Okay. Well, I'm really grateful for everybody's time, and super more than happy to connect. My email will be within the PDF of the slide deck that I shared out. I hope I was able to kind of give you all a clear idea of how the grant writing component is really just a small portion of the work necessary to ensure that that all of the different components are in place and prepared for your for the work to be done within your agency. And I'm more than happy to read any of the things that you all write, or if you have any questions in specific, I'm more than happy to do so. And yeah, let us know if any of you are interested in a part 2, and I'd be more than happy to share that out with you all.
Mahalo, G. Mahalo to everyone who attended. I can honestly say our Pu'ulohala folks, actually, they want part 2. And I'm pretty sure everybody out there also wants part 2. And I'm sorry if I'm talking. I'm here, right here. Okay. So I mahalo for taking time. And I know you have to go and get Kaimakana. I know you have to go to school and celebrate him. So I do want to share that we are really, really appreciative of the information you have given us. It's going to take some time to absorb for some of us. I want to also affirm as testimony that I asked G, was it 2 years ago, G? I think 2 years ago, or 3, I don't even remember at this point. I did ask her, hey, G, I want to learn how to write grants. Like, this is where I'm at. And in the first year, we were already funding like over, over $250,000 dollars. And then we've grown since then. And this is the outcome of writing grants. And this is the outcome of G's work right here. And so it does benefit our small communities. I say don't be afraid. And I think you said something to me back then, I'm gonna share it right now as well, is you're gonna fail. People are gonna decline a lot of your grants. And that is fine, because every single time you do it, even if they don't approve your grant, you're learning. And that is better, and you just get better and better. And that is one thing, is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try. You're going to keep tweaking yourself, and you're going to get better every single time. So thank you so much, G. Thank you for all your work. And
to piggyback on that too, like one of the things that I always do when I get declined all the time. It's good practice for all of us. It does invoke a little bit of like childhood trauma, because it's like, oh my God, I failed, right? But and it's totally normal, but you get used to it, first of all. Second of all, I think through that process, every single time what I do is I go back to that funder or that individual or whoever it is and say, how come? Because I want to learn and I want to share. And sometimes it's like, you know what? We loved your stuff. It just didn't align with what our priorities were. And that makes me feel better. Or, you know what? We were looking for a little bit more of X, Y, and Z. And then you can go again next year, right? It's every year for the most part, a lot of these things. And so I highly encourage it. You guys all have like the knowledge. Nobody knows your agency better than you do. And nobody can speak more passionately about it. So it would take, you all will do a much better job at this opportunity to write about your agency than I ever could, even with all of my years of experience, because nobody knows it and can speak to it the way that you can. So make sure your voices are heard through the process and bring that kala in and do awesome things with it within our community. So super, super grateful for your time. And thank you again, Kanoi, for the space, and Illinois for the time too.
Mahalo. Have fun. Oh, can we take a picture? Wait.
Oh, Kanoi, some folks are asking for the QR code. I guess it didn't scan. Is it the same as the RSVP link?
Yeah, no, it's actually the sign-in sheet, and I'm gonna put it up on the screen. Do you see that?
Okay.
Do you see it?
No.
Of course not. Okay, G, we wanted to see if we can take a group photo really quick, and then I will definitely share the QR code before you leave.
I think I just did it for you.
Huh? You just did it for us?
Yeah, you did. You're so great.
Okay, well, one more time, everybody. Shaka. Yeah, take a picture. Ready? And go. All right. Thank you so much. If anybody is on our end taking pictures, thank you so much for taking that. I'm gonna put up the that right there. And with that being said, mahalo everybody for joining us. Please go ahead and sign in the sign-in sheet. Our group here will continue to stay for a little bit, do the evaluation, and ahui ho, kako, mahalo, and aloha.
Mahalo. Ahui ho.
Mahalo, hui ho.
Thank you. The form.